Welcome to a football show Thursday edition, Monday edition. What day is it, Paul Kuharsky?
I wish it was Thursday.
I'm Braden. You're Paul. I know that much. We are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages. Are you suggesting you don't want to be talking with me about Titans football right now?
No, just I like always heading into the weekend.
Lots of stuff to get to today on the show. Carnell, Tate, Keldric, Faulk, Anthony Hill, all the offensive linemen, Nick Singleton. It doesn't matter. They weren't on a practice field on Friday and Saturday, but we'll discuss what that means. Is it the right decision by the coaching staff? What did we learn from rookie camp over the weekend? There's a new media policy. How will it affect all of you, the fans out there? And of course, I wanted to go back and look at, I wanted to compare John Robinson's first two draft classes with Rand Carthon's first two draft classes with these two classes for Borgoni, and kind of set some parameters around the conversations that are taking place with the job that Borgoni and his staff have done over the last 2 years. So I went back and looked at all the impact that those classes had. Certainly in hindsight, some really impressive draft picks from Robinson, not so much, of course, with Carthon, but at the same time, we have the benefit of time to look at all of those from Robinson and from Carthon. So we don't have that yet as it pertains to Borgoni, obviously, but I wanted to set some guidelines, PK, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And then I'll get your thoughts on sort of your opinion on the lasting impact of Chad Brinker and his tenure here in Nashville, as bizarre and as short and as interesting as it might have been. And I know Nick and I had a chance to talk about that last week, but you and I have not had a chance to talk about that yet. So I want to get your thoughts on that. If you are watching on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, wherever, please share the product. Give us a retweet, give us a share, give us a thumbs up, notifications turned on YouTube. We have tons of content pouring out onto that page. So please turn on those notifications and share the show. And let's get some boys in here. Let's get some folks in here to ask some questions as well. So Team Ramrod says, "What's up, boys? I heard you guys. I heard on the radio that you guys are working on behalf of Chad Brinker. I don't know who said that, but I hadn't heard that, PK.
No, me neither. But we'll talk about it. I mean, if we're going to pretend like he did nothing, yeah. I mean, if I'm supposed to pretend like he did nothing, no, I'm not doing that.
Well, and that also requires me to listen to radio. So there's that. Go forth. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Good to see you. Okay. Nate, how are you? There we go. Okay. I want to start with first Sinkers Beverages, by the way. Sinkers Beverages, make sure you support good local journalism or good local businesses, including local journalism like paulkuharsky.com, like 440 Sports, but also like Sinkers. 5-time liquor store of the year, craft beer fridge in the city. The best craft beer fridge. They won an award for it. You can get great local beers in there. East Nashville Beer Works, Tennessee Brew Works, Yazoo Brewing Company, all great local craft beers that you can get in that award-winning retail craft beer fridge at Sinkers Beverages. I was just up there today. They have you could buy a pouch of olive juice, PK, which if you're like me and you drink martinis, there's never a good ratio of olive juice to olives in the jar. You got to have the right amount of olives. There's got to be a good ratio to make the drinks consistently. And I always run out of juice. And you can buy a pouch. I never knew I needed this, PK. A pouch of olive juice to refill your olive jar. And now I can have martinis forever. That's the kind of innovation that Sinkers delivers to the table.
That is beautiful.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. Just here to catch PK catch some bodies. Is that a NIMBY Tears mug? Jordan, I love your PBN references. No, it's not. It's Dolly Parton. Zach was talking trash about our show. Is that right? Or is he just saying everybody in the media is on Chad Brinker's
I'll say this. If
job?
Zach was bold enough to say my name on his air, he is living very comfortably, because I know his program director would be in the door the next break saying, don't say his name. Don't say his name. So
is it Voldemort? Is it Voldemort the one you're not allowed to say in Harry Potter? Is that right?
I have no idea about Harry.
Yeah, I don't either.
But I do know some things about the zone.
Oh, you do. Thoughts on the quotes from execs saying that the Titans were between Tate and Faulk at 4 seems improbable. Mike Herndon tweeted the Athletic article a few hours ago. I have not seen that yet.
That's not new. That was pre-draft.
Yeah.
So impressive that teams had a bead on who the Titans liked. I don't think they ever would have taken Faulk at 4, but look, after the draft, there's always something that comes out that, or we revert back to something that shows us somebody was very on it. And that thing was very on it. I remember after the Corey Davis and the Dory Jackson draft, I can't remember. I wish I could. I think maybe it was Bucky Brooks who came out with one mock draft, maybe the day of the draft, maybe a day before the draft, and he had those 2 exact picks, and was completely on it. So I always like to go back to the person that did the reporting, like that Athletic had there with executives saying those 2 names, or like that mock drafter nailed both of those picks, which were not obvious picks by John Robinson that year, and give him a shout out, because there's so much BS speculation throughout this whole process. People know how much I hate it. So people that actually have really informed speculation or actual reporting that is dead on deserve a great deal of credit.
So I'm gonna I don't normally do this, but I feel like it might bother you. But also, I want to get some flowers out of this.
Oh, we're gonna pat you on the back.
I had 4 straight first-round picks in a row. I had Corey Davis, Adoree Jackson, Rashaan Evans, and Jeffrey Simmons. I had all 4 in a row, and there's evidence of it on 102.5 in the morning. I said that. Now, that was not based a lot on, like, that's not reporting, though. Like, so I had conversations with John Robinson, like, on the record, obviously. So that's not like, hey, a source told me that the team really liked this guy. That's not what that was. So I'll take a victory lap, but it was not the same as an insider who has a conversation with a scout or a GM or a coach, and they know that Carnell Tate is clearly their number 1 player at this position, and blah 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 blah. So I will say there was a time, and it's partly why I like what Borgonzi's doing. And we're a little off topic here, but I felt that John Robinson was doing predictable, logical, intelligent things to fill holes with the right talent at the right spots in the draft. And I felt like that's why I was getting it right. And I think that's why I think that's kind of what Borgonzi's doing, but we'll compare that. We'll compare that coming up here a little bit.
I like the way you spelled out why you were matching him, except who were the 4? I mean, Corey Davis was not a good draft pick.
No,
Dory Jackson was a middling draft pick, not first-round quality draft pick here, though he's had a long career. Rashaan Evans was a disastrous draft pick.
Oh, yeah.
He was an idiot. And Jeffrey Simmons, obviously, a home run. So 3 out of the 4 were bad. One of them was awful.
Yeah, no, and that's not the argument either. Like, hey, these were way to go. Like, it's not necessarily. It's like we're all kind of guessing at what Carnell Tate's going to be, at what Corey Davis was going to be. Now, it was not. Corey Davis was a reach because of the player and the draft class at wide receiver wasn't very good, et cetera, et cetera. But there was an element of logic and reason and predictability and soundness that made sense in the moment. Now, again, as we look at all these first 2 classes for Rand, John, and Mike, you'll kind of see that it takes time, but like just because it's logical and makes a lot of sense doesn't necessarily mean it's ever going to work out. And sometimes you see things that are totally stupid that make no sense and they actually work out quite well. So you just never know. So,
and that's one reason to be a little bit scared of Tate is, are they doing the same thing? Like, you decide he's the best receiver and you need a receiver, but is it too early for that receiver? Now, definitively, many people thought so with Corey Davis right on the spot. Definitively, I think it's the other direction here. A lot of us were surprised by it because we didn't talk about it, because we didn't think it was the value, but the league pretty much came out and said, no problem with Carnell Tate at 4. He was going to go at 6, 7, taking him a couple spots earlier than people expected. If you really liked him, and for Cam Ward, not a big deal.
So let me ask you, this is not how we were going to start, but I like the direction this is going, which is I'm curious what information provides value in studying a team's front office. Meaning, if we ever went back and heard Borgonzi tell a story about, Femi Oladejo or Kevin Winston or Cam Ward, what information, what reporting, what details about the process? Because the process seems very sound here. Like that's the thing about this, is that maybe that's what I'm getting at with John Robinson comparisons, is that the process feels smart. Are there things that we could learn 2 years from now about the process with Cam Ward, or even this year's class, that would be super important to how you evaluate the work that the front office is doing? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, but it's leading me somewhere different in terms of the emotions of it. And I think the way media, my side of the media, draft side of the media, and fandom takes it, because I think they have to be far more detached from these guys until the moment comes than people can become accustomed to. Like, they would have taken Jeremiah Love, and I'm reporting, I don't know if I've come out and said that, but I mean, I know they would have taken Jeremiah Love. So, did they buy into that buildup up until a week before, when it seemed like Arizona kind of changed its mind? You can't let yourself fall in love with a guy unless you're at number 1 or at number 2, where somebody's taking a quarterback number 1 for sure. And so, you have to love Carnell Tate when you take him, but were you more in love with the other guy and more excited about that? And then the deeper you get into the draft, if your guy goes just before you or you miss out, we think they wanted to trade up for somebody else before they traded up for Faulk. You're in love with the other guy, and then that trade doesn't pan out, and then you trade for Faulk. Well, maybe you have universal love for all these guys. Hey, here are the 20 guys. We'd love to wind up with 9 or 8 of these 20 guys spread out throughout the value of the draft. And we love them all. So if we get 8 or 9 of these guys, we're going to be really happy. And I think that's more how the process works. I'd like to have a detailed, to your process question, a question about that, your love and affection. Because if you really love Jeremiah Love, and for 2.5 months of a 3-month process, you think that's who you're going to get, and a week before you figure out, hey, you know what? He's not there. Our love for Carnell Tate has to escalate, and our love for Jeremiah Love has to de-escalate. Well, that was a long love process.
Paul, there's a lot of people at the bar at 2 a.m. Okay. Like, if your first choice doesn't say yes, you can always go to the second choice.
I know, I really had my eye on that one for a long time.
Right.
No, but that's a good comparison, because when you end up in that situation, you forget about the one that you were eyeing for a long time, right?
It's been a long time since you and I were in.
Yeah, a long time.
So let me
memory, but an apt comparison.
And apparently Jordan is in the prime of his career. Exotic dancer rules moving forward: never fall in love with a prospect unless your team is picking number 1. Is this draft so bad that the past draft logic can't be applied? I don't know about that, Ed. I want to get back to that question. I want to follow up on what you said, which is that you are basically reporting that they were going to take Jeremiah Love. Wouldn't it be safe to say that they were going to take David Bailey first had he fallen, but they kind of knew that he wasn't, and so they were more prepared?
Came to terms with that one earlier, right? The Arizona stuff came out week of the draft, maybe, that started to creep out. But it sounded like.
So when Wyatt or whoever asked for me on my prediction on Titans Online, and when we do this show, and when I picked David Bailey because I thought that was their number 1 player. Yeah, and I thought if he fell. I did what
I hate. I hate when people take somebody that they're pretty sure is going to be gone. And I did that. I broke my own rule.
And I thought he was going to fall potentially, maybe. Like, I thought maybe Reese goes 2, and then Love goes 3, and then Bailey's falls to him at 4. But what I aired on was the side of the player I thought they wanted the most. And that was based on conversations. Like, I thought they wanted David Bailey the most, and that he was their best player, that Love was 2. And after that, I think Tate was absolutely at the top of their board. I don't think they reached on him or moved down to some other horizontal place on their board. Like, I think they had Tate ahead of Styles. The Reese one is the interesting one. It's where did they actually have Reese? That's the one I don't think
they had him ahead of Reese for sure. I mean, if they didn't have him ahead of Reese, they would have taken Reese.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, all right. So let's get to all these players on the actual practice field, and which was they weren't. And I'm curious, the way Robert Saleh explained it to us in the press conference on Friday was essentially that these guys have not had routine, regular physical training, mental and physical training, and so that because their lives have been upended and totally chaotic and varied, there's no routine, there's no structure. They've been flying all over the place, that their bodies aren't necessarily ready for football activities. Now, I don't know how super stressful any of those football activities really were, as he then went on to explain that everything is going to be super dumbed down so that they can play fast, all these undrafted free agents and tryouts and etc. What do you make of them not putting any of their rookie players, not necessarily available for us? We'll get to that in a second. But just in general, the decision to say, look, these guys, their bodies aren't there. I see some of the logic on it. I don't know if I agree with it, but I do see some of the logic. Where are you at on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really care. I would like to put eyes on them. I would like to get new art on them. It'd be a nice traditional thing. But his explanation is fine. I think it runs a little scared. I mean, he had one guy get hurt one time. Fluke injuries happen, can happen in any situation. I hope it's not indicative of really babying guys along. I mean, things are mandated at the beginning of camp, the 5 practice ramp up and all of that. But we'll see what they do at OTAs. That hopefully we get a schedule sometime soon of when we will be able to see guys at OTAs, just to plan our lives. But I don't think in the big picture it's that big a deal. I mean, if there are a couple of these undrafteds that they really like and think have a shot at the 53, they just went through the same process as the 8 guys they did draft.
I know.
So it's a fine line there.
Well, they don't have nearly as much invested, obviously, in those guys.
No.
So they're going to be more careful. Here's I guess the very next question, because I tend to agree with you that in the grand scheme of Carnell Tate finding success with Cam Ward in this offense with this coaching staff, being on the practice field on Friday and Saturday means absolutely nothing. No. Like almost not. I mean, is it good to get your feet wet and kind of learn some? But the meetings are more important. The conversations are more important. Getting to know your teammates in the city. All stuff that's like kind of first step before you actually go learn to, like, how do I work with this coach or how do I work with that player? And so I don't think it matters at all, which then leads me immediately to think, is there some ulterior motive to not putting them out there? Like to not have us film them and do their ladder drills and film this and put it out there? Like, is there some ulterior motive to maybe protecting them to some degree and easing them into coverage? Or is that not am I just tinfoil hat?
I mean, I'd be the first one to say that, and I didn't feel that. And they don't have any obligation to open both, just one, and they opened both. So I'm disinclined to think that. I just don't think. I don't think that rookie minicamp is ever anything. I think the biggest thing is like, here's how we practice. This is what we do. So when you blend in with the veterans in short order, you're not doing it for the first time. Now, I would imagine there will be rookie only walkthrough. These OTA days, they have, the quote unquote practice, which is at a low speed and not with pads or helmets or anything. But there's also like a walkthrough element to it. And I would imagine that they'd have some rookie only walkthrough stuff that would get them, up to speed to be able to just get on the field with the veterans and not look like, well, what are we doing? How are we doing this or whatever, so that they don't look dumb.
So that leads us into the media policy thing here. And I am going to ask you guys to help out local media in just a second. No money, just 5 minutes of your time. So just stay tuned for that in a second. But Jordan asked the question, is this an Everett thing or a head coach thing? So we're going to, let's lay out what took place. There is some slight changes to where we are allowed to be positioned on the practice fields. Now, for those that don't know, one of the fields is completely under construction. Fields 2 and 3 are in use right now, and that's what they were over mini camp or rookie camp, whatever you want to call it.
So this is the field that's under construction is the one that is the most convenient field. It's against the new building. It's in the corner, so to speak.
It's the one that you can see if you're coming as a fan on fan days. It is the one that's just the most used, I would say. Like 1 and 2 are the ones that are most used. And then when that turf gets all used up, they move to 3. And then it's all about protecting the grass, frankly, more than anything else. And so what they announced is that there were going to be some differences in sort of policy around training camp and around practice coverage. Because, again, rules for training camp for cup practice are different than rules in the regular season. And Robert Saleh at his press conference before we walk out said it was exclusively about what he cared the most about was schematic information, which that's not new. That's every coach cares about schematic information. So why don't you walk us through the differences, and then we can debate whether or not you think this is going to affect fans, your coverage, our coverage. What do you make of it?
Well, we pretty much always had the perimeter of the whole 3 fields. So you couldn't walk between, if they're using 2 fields, you couldn't walk along the sideline of the inside field, but you could walk along the back edge and the entire outside of whatever field was being used. They've cut that down now. You can't get near the interior building, which, by the way, is where there's a media patio, which is kind of our outdoor headquarters, where oftentimes you drop a bag or reserve a seat or whatever, which it appears we're not going to have access to before practice. Anyway, people don't care about those logistics. And look, I understand people not caring about this to a degree. You should care about it to this degree. We can't see things as well if we can only go to the 35 or the 50-yard line. And so if I'm at the 35 or the 50-yard line and there's something going down in that end zone, I can't see it well. And you say use Zoom. Well, you know, if I'm here and the important play is happening on the far side of the field, 60 yards away, a zoomed camera is not getting good video of that. It's not. So if Carnell Tate is over there dropping an easy play, you're not going to get good video of it. Now, if he's making a great play, the Titans will provide you great video of it in the long run.
Right.
But if it's a bad play, you're not going to see it.
Well, okay, first of all, the video that we provide to all of you in training camp or at practice is largely irrelevant. And I'm not meaning to reduce the value of what we do, but they don't let you shoot anything important for a reason. And that's not a this staff or this organization. That's across the league. That's every coach that I've been out there with, most of the coaches you've been out there with since we've had smartphones basically in whatever 09, and the cameras got so good in the last few years. And so the key is not, and honestly, I would argue that the vast majority of our coverage will not be affected, because when they're in team on field 1, we can still go all the way down 70 yards of the field and see the vast majority of it. And then we can go on to the other. We basically have half the coverage route, right? Like we can do a U around these fields and not around the whole thing. Now, what is going to be interesting to me is if they decide to do more team stuff, more important stuff on the middle field, where you physically cannot get close to it at all, where you used to be able to get sort of to a corner of an end zone and see one-on-ones or see team drills. And so it's less about the videos that we shoot of like individual warm-ups or individual drills, and more about like, no, that offensive lineman just won 6 straight reps, but we can't really tell why or against who or what happened. And so we're losing context around, I would argue maybe, what do you think? Like 20 to 30% of potential plays. A lot of it depends on where they put the team. If they put the team on field 1 and on field 3 most of the time, then we should get pretty decent sight lines on what's actually happening.
And during training camp, we do get to film some important stuff, some one-on-ones.
That's true.
And here, DP 1087 this is just a typical lazy response. I don't think fans really care if we don't see a bad practice rep. Some fans really react to all of these reps, blow everything out of proportion, and if now all you're going to see is positive instead of negative, that is going to be significant. And you're not speaking for every fan. And quite frankly, I am better than you at telling you what's important out of practice. I am. I've done it this is going to be my 30th year, and I'm smarter than you at telling you what's important from practice. And this restricts my ability to do so.
Yeah.
And I'm sick of people telling me what is and isn't important out of practice when I'm there and you're not.
30 years on the Titans beat?
30 years.
Or Oilers/Titans or just Titans?
30th year on the Oilers Titans.
Man,
well, Titans have only been here since 99.
First of all, congratulations, 30 years.
Thank you.
That's a long time to have worked a job. No, so I just wanted to point that out. I think it is worth noting. I don't think it's a huge deal, but there are moments where it could become a big deal if something very important happens where we normally would have seen it and instead we can't see it. And that could be a huge positive for them. That could be a positive for a player. There could be a great couple of plays And we might not have all the context, or a bad couple of plays, and we may not have all the context.
Also, never minding
not
that.
a huge deal.
This is a typical thing that the Titans start to do where they start to get concerned with things that are not important. John Robinson did this. You start to get power, and he spent time out of his purview fixing a pothole in the parking lot that was not important, had nothing to do with anything. And there were avenues to get a pothole fixed in the parking lot. And all he had to do was go to the guy that was in charge of that. And instead, he started making phone calls to get. This has no bearing on their ability to win or lose on a Sunday. Zero. Has no effect on anything. It takes policies that have been in place for 29 years and it changes them for no reason. They say it's player safety. And what's the other thing they say?
Was it schematic?
Well, there's no construction issue down the other end of the field to take away the corner near the bubble. And it's a player safety issue, but the player safety issue that arose at the very first practice is a guy running into the construction fence that is too close to the field. That has nothing to do with the media. That distracts the real player safety issue onto us, which has nothing to do with us. It's bullshit. It's hocus pocus. And this is a sort of stuff that when Mike Borgoni gets to John Robinson's place and he's had good drafts and then he starts to get too egotistical about it and he starts to draft the hurt guy and everything, where he's put pebbles in the thing of non-football stuff that hurts him. It's not important. Don't fucking worry about where we are.
I hear you.
Also, if you feel like we're interfering with players, don't jump to putting us behind ropes. Have a meeting and say, hey, we're concerned that you guys are pushing the envelope on this line that's there without ropes. We want you not to do it. We want you not to talk to our people during practice, so don't. And we're going to tell our people not to talk to you. Not jump to ropes and boundaries. Have a relationship conversation.
Yeah, there you go. I want to see it.
And Ray School, we're not making it a story. We talk about all kinds of little things. Just because we're spending 5 minutes discussing it doesn't mean it's headline news.
It's also May.
Your guys' inability to distinguish a small conversation from headline news pisses me off. Like, have some sort of ability to discern big, small, medium. You know, the three bears ate the porridge. Too hot, too cold, just right. This is,
it's small.
Porridge.
Yeah. Also, it's May. Like it's May. We're gonna go through a couple of weeks, a couple of days of practice, and then there's gonna be, nothing.
I made a story bringing it up in a press conference. Listen, that press conference, again, it's not for you. It's for me. I'm going to find out information. That's the moment I had to talk to the coach about it. And so I asked him a question. And guess what? He was unprepared for the question. And he's the guy that I exchange information with. How is that a huge thing?
And guess what else? We had mostly you, but everyone was listening, of course, had a very productive, quick chat with the coach after the press conference to further clarify things that he cares about, because we're not being assholes here. Like, we're just trying to do our jobs. All right. Quickly here. I want to see as much as possible from practices personally, says Joey. What was the policy during the Vrabel era? I would say Vrabel allowed us, or John Robinson, or both, whatever. You could do the entire perimeter of all three fields. Then Callahan, who was a little bit more available on a one-on-one level, especially even in fireside chats before training camp practices, which were really, really, I thought, very laid back and intelligent. But then they limited a little bit of space between like field 2 or whatever. So this is a slow step back in the other direction, but not by much.
Vrabel didn't like us. Vrabel put off the record if guys are on the side field, you couldn't talk about it.
Yeah.
Callahan loosened that. And that's the post-press conference conversation that I initiated with Saleh. Can we say who's working on the side practice field? He said yes. He's concerned with scheme. He's not concerned with that. We can't say what a guy's doing, but we can say if an injured guy reemerges on the field that he's on the side practice field. Eddie says, is this porridge temperature only something that annoys you, PK? Nobody else on the beat has publicly complained. Let me explain how this works. Everybody leaves it to me. They know I'll take care of it, so they all stand over there like a bunch of pussies, and they don't say anything, or they have a private conversation because they think making noise is going to piss off the Titans, and we're going to be good little soldiers here and just take what we're given. And they say other teams do it. So if other teams do it, well, other teams go to the playoffs also, and the Titans aren't doing that. So listen, I'm the noisemaker, and I'm the guy who gets shit done with the team, and everybody else sits and watches me do
it. I will go on the record and say I'm glad that you're in the press corps asking those questions. I appreciate that. All right, so we'll put that to bed. We'll start comparing draft classes because we're 30 minutes into the show here. Quickly before we do that, though, so for the one or two people in the comments who don't care about this stuff, this might not be for you. But for those of you in the comments who care about good quality local journalism, there's an organization called Press Forward that has partnered with a Middle Tennessee organization, Community Foundation, to help put out a very quick 5-minute anonymous survey. And I'm putting it in the YouTube show notes right now. It takes literally less than 5 minutes. It's anonymous. It's about learning what the market is doing well and what coverage in the market is lacking. It's basically...
Don't fill this out. Raysko doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Get out of the room.
This is for all of you who care about your coverage and want to have a little input in it. This is your chance to sort of like just take a quick little survey. It's going to be this organization covers 40 counties in Middle Tennessee. It's a nonprofit organization, and all they're doing is trying to figure out what's working, what's not working, what do we need to do better as independent and local media in Nashville. Again, it takes no time at all, less than 5 minutes, anonymous. Click on the link. It's Press Forward midtn.news. Press Forward midtn.news. Please take 5 minutes and fill it out. It'll be very helpful, and it's basically giving you a voice to help decide, what coverage you guys want, what's good, what's bad. And sports are a big part of this. For the first time, I think, that I've ever seen Press Forward, because I've been in the steering committee rooms, sports is going to be a part of it for sure. So make sure you check out Press Forward midtn.news. Just fill out the survey. We really appreciate it. It's linked in the show notes, and it's linked on YouTube as well. Okay, so I want to look at the draft classes here, because I think there's already instantaneously talk about comparing all these general managers, mostly John Robinson, Rand Carthon, and Mike Borgoni. And I think we can look at, certainly we have hindsight with John Robinson fully fleshed out. We know exactly the outcomes of every one of these picks. And we have some, if not most, of the outcomes for the Rand Carthon draft, with the exception of, I guess, J.C. Latham. And we'll see if he turns out to be an elite player or just a good player, and that could change the way we view that draft pick. And we have very little, of course, to go on with Mike Borgoni. But when I say, hey, I want you to compare these two draft classes to the first 2 years of John Robinson, what's the right way? How does your brain go about comparing them at this stage, knowing that you're only 1 year into one draft class and none of the second ones have even taken the snaps yet?
So you're asking me about Borgoni's work so far?
Yeah, like how do you begin to start to, like, we're only in the beginning stages of stacking up these classes and comparing them, but there's a lot of talk already about Borgoni's class being as good as the first two classes with John Robinson. If you want me to, while you're thinking about this, I can read through some of these stats if you want me to.
Well, no, I would go back. I mean, this is the best first way to look at based on the evidence that we have so far. I mean, for John Robinson, we looked at a guy like, let's say, Tajay Sharp or LaShawn Sims. They were 5th rounders. Let's look at Jayon Brown. He was a notch better than those guys, right?
Jayon was a 5th rounder.
Yeah. Dane Cruikshank even had his moments for a while where he was playing really solid nickel against some tight ends. Amani Hooker, a very solid hit as a 4th rounder.
So that was his third. That was John Robinson's 3rd draft class, for the record.
Okay. So that's a batch of 5th, mostly 5th and a 4th rounder. But like Tajay Spears and LaShawn Sims, we looked at as those are pretty good 5th round picks who filled a role for a while. And we were satisfied with the production they got out of those guys. That was kind of, okay production for those guys.
So
now we go to Borgoni's first draft and we see DK, Helm, and Io Manor. Now Helm flashed pretty good, and you've got good hopes. Isle Manor dropped off, but you feel good about those guys. But DK is a all-pro kick returner and a pretty promising wide receiver in his first year. First year production out of those three guys collectively as fourth rounders, with Slater in the competition to start in his second year. I'd say that's a very favorable comparison.
And didn't Robert Saleh specifically call out Marcus Harris?
Yeah, he said don't sleep on Marcus Harris.
He's going to be a fun one to watch or whatever.
So that's a very favorable comparison for Mike Borgoni against John Robinson, who drafted well at the beginning for the 4th, 5th, 6th round.
So here, let's do this for his first two draft classes, and we'll sort of set the scene here on the back end because so John Robinson's first two classes were 2016 and 2017. Rand's were 23 and 24. Obviously, Borgoni the last two. So in the 6th and 7th rounds, we'll just do those rounds for now because I think it's easier to kind of clear them out. Sebastian Tretola, Aaron Wallace, and Kalen Reed were the first three picks in the 6th and 7th round that I'm talking about.
Nothing out of them. Kalen Reed works as a scout now for the
one total game played by Tretola, 12 games played total, no starts from Wallace, 7 games total from Reed, so largely nothing from those three. Josh Carraway, Brad Seaton, and Khalfani Muhammad had a combined single game played in the NFL. So 6 picks. In the last 6 picks of each of the first two drafts from John Robinson accomplished almost nothing.
Now,
just to set that, in the first 2 years,
it was drafting into a better team where later draft picks have a lesser chance.
Okay.
To be fair, but they were not good players. None of them were particularly good players.
The very first pick by each of these guys, Jack Conklin, 32 games started, which is all of them, and ended up being an all-pro. That was the first pick ever by JR. Peter Skoronski looks like it might be the best player on the team in Rand's first pick in 2023. And then Cam Ward looks like the starting quarterback. I think right now, all three of those, you have to say jury's still out, but very good so far.
Yes.
Then you go Corey Davis, Adoree Jackson, which we talked about in the first round next. J.C. Latham. This is the next first-round pick for Rand. And then Tate and Faulk. Very similar, frankly, to John Robinson, which is, an offense and a defensive piece in the first round. So, again, Corey Davis had 34 catches for 375 yards in his first season. If Carnell Tate does that this year, people will lose their minds in a bad way.
Oh, yeah. No, that'd be entirely unacceptable.
He had over 100 targets in his second season, 891 yards, 4 touchdowns, 65 catches. I think you need to do that more this year as a rookie if you're Carnell Tate. So I don't think the bar is very high to be better than Corey Davis. Adoree Jackson played 32 games, started 29 of the first 32 games in his first 2 seasons. I think people would say that he was a pretty solid player in his first 2 years and then never really got better and was never a great first-round pick. He was just
okay. Up a lot. Disappointing as a punt returner, which was supposed to be part of the attraction and never really settled into that job. Flashed.
Yeah. So then let's go to the second round. John Robinson's first second-round pick ever, Kevin Dodd, played 1 game.
Maybe his biggest bust.
Started 1 game. Austin Johnson in his first 2 seasons only started 3 games and played in 26. And then, of course, Derrick Henry was the other second-round pick. Kevin Byard was the third-round pick. Now, here's an interesting one. Derrick Henry, do you know who had more yards in their first 2 seasons from scrimmage? Derrick Henry or Tajay Spears?
Tajay Spears might have.
Tajay Spears had almost 1,400 yards from scrimmage in his first 2 seasons. Derrick Henry had 1,200 yards rushing and 270 yards. So they were about 1,400 yards total, both in their first 2 seasons. The point is, we look at that Derrick Henry draft pick, and it's an elite draft pick. He's a Hall of Famer, one of the best draft picks by any Titans general manager ever. But after 2 years, you cannot say that it was a home run draft pick.
Oh, no.
We didn't know that at that time.
Did not have great vision. Was indecisive. Was behind Deion Lewis in that first. Well, was behind
DeMarco Murray.
Yeah. DeMarco Murray, and then was behind Deion Lewis.
Yeah. Kevin Byard was the third-round pick. 32 games played. He was not a starter until year 2. So even, again, another elite draft pick by the Tennessee Titans was not, like Kevin Winston in the 3rd round, was not a starter in year 1. Now, was Kevin Byard better than Kevin Winston in year 1? Yes. Yes, he was. But he did not start until the 2nd season when he started all 16 games. So if Kevin Winston were to start all 16 games this season, or 17, I guess I should say, which there's a chance that he is penciled in as the starter right now. I'm not calling him an all-pro or a Pro Bowl caliber consistent safety, but we can't say that Kevin Winston is this total bust when Kevin Byard didn't even start until his 2nd season.
Yeah, but again, Kevin Byard came into a better team. I don't remember who the safeties were then, but
2016 they were. So is 15 the year that they jumped up to 9 wins? Is that?
Might have been.
No, because 16 they had the number 1 overall pick in the draft. They came in on the worst possible team.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think who the safeties were, but I'm not going to recall that off the top of my head.
Rashad Johnson, maybe free agent from the Cardinals that John Robinson would have signed. And then we get to Tajay Sharp, who had 500 yards receiving in his 1st season, but then he was out his 2nd year. He was injured. He was out. Taywan Taylor, remember him? Was a 3rd round pick in John Robinson's 2nd class. Every pass he caught in his first 2 seasons, and then he didn't play really again after that. But Jayon Brown was a 5th round pick. Corey Levin was a 6th round pick. So Jonnu Smith was a 3rd round pick in that draft class as well. He started 26 games, I think. So that's comparable to Gunnar Helm potentially. Probably wasn't used as much as he should have been. And so I just think you can look at those 2 classes and how many true bona fide long-time starters did you get out of that class, those 2 classes. You got Jack Conklin, you got Derrick Henry, you got Kevin Byard, you got technically Corey Davis, Adoree Jackson, Jonnu Smith, and Jayon Brown, right?
It's a good haul.
That's pretty good. But Marcus Harris is competing for starting right now, going into camp as a nickelback. That may not be their plan eventually, but right now he is. Jackson Slater is going to compete, whether we like it or not, for a position on the offensive line. Ayumanor, DK, and Helm are all competing for starting spots, and right now they're at least 2 of them are probably starting. DK at 3rd receiver and Helm at tight end. Kevin Winston, Femi Oladejo could be starters on this defense at wide 9 and at safety. We know Cam's obviously starting.
Yeah, I don't see Femi starting, but
I don't either. But my point is I think if you want to compare Mike Borgonzi's first 2 draft classes with John Robinson's first 2 draft classes and say, I think after 1 year, they are trending in the same direction, I think you can say that right now. At camp and next season, we'll have more information and the data may change. But right now, they are trending in a similar way. Now, do I see Derrick Henry and do I see Kevin Byard? It's going to be hard to live up to those.
Yeah. That was exceptionally good. And that's why this team, had those 2 big runs with the AFC Championship run and with the number 1 seed run.
But even as I'm filling this out, Paul, and just literally writing the names next to each other, I'm looking at 3 4th round picks that all feel like they could contribute. And you're looking at 3 2nd round picks in John Robinson's first draft, where one of them was a Hall of Famer, one of them was a contributor, and one of them was a bust. That's not all that different. I'm actually filling it out. Oh, they got a corner late and a guard late. That sounds a little bit like Corey Levin and Jayon Brown. Or hey, maybe Anthony Hill is their Jayon Brown in this next draft class, right? Like I see some similarities, and I'm not saying that it's going to be as good. I'm just saying on paper, they look very comparable.
Yeah, it needs to be better than Jayon Brown, right?
For a 2nd rounder, yeah.
Yeah. And then there was a Monty, that was later after the downturn. But like they had Jayon Brown as a 5th, who was good. They had David Long, who was good as a 5th. And then they moved up to the 3rd to Monty Rice, who was bad.
That's right.
And now they move up to 2nd. He needs
Monty Rice. Wow.
Better than all of them.
I forgot about that. Obviously, Rand's first draft was Skoronski, Levis, Spears, Josh Wiley, Jalen Duncan, Colton Dowell. Dowell played 10 games, 1 start. Duncan actually started 8 games in his first 2 seasons, and he's been out of football ever since.
Out of necessity.
Josh Wiley got 28 games played in his first 2 seasons, 7 starts. He's obviously concussion protocol, was on a different team last year. Tajay Spears has only started 2 games in his first 2 years, but again, he had 765 yards rushing and over 600 yards receiving on 80 catches. Like, he was a prominent member of the offense, for lack of a better term. And again, maybe on a very bad team. Levis, of course, he got his 21 starts in 21 games in 2 years. Tannehill started, and then he was hurt in the second year. It's hard to evaluate what Will Levis is, because you take a shot at a quarterback, and if it doesn't work, it sets you back. And if it works, you're a Hall of Famer. So it's kind of like, it's hard to really evaluate how, like, I don't really have a problem with them taking that shot on Will Levis in the second round. I really don't.
No, the problem really is the Malik Willis pick, which is a year before, right?
And that would have been Robinson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But having 2 quarterbacks in 2 years with primo picks is not really the best roster planning. Best allocation resources.
And so then you got, and again, Skoronski, Levis, Spears still on the roster. Then you go Latham, Sweat, Gray, and even Cedric Gray. Fascinatingly, Cedric Gray, absolute bust of a pick in his first year.
A year, yeah.
And a fantastic gem in his second. So you just don't know. Anyone who's making, I kind of wanted to do this because I think there's a lot of talk about Femi and Kevin Winston. And my thought is, we got to hold off on that talk about making any definitive verdicts about what Kevin Winston will or will not be in the NFL, or what Femi Oladejo will or will not be in the NFL. I mean, Marcus Harris looks like he's already over-exceeded his draft slot. Jackson Slater hasn't really, but like, I just think we got to wait on this stuff. And I think there's a lot of opinion about Kevin Winston being a bust last year, or Femi Oladejo being a bust last year.
Well, I don't think
that's too early.
I think Titans fans are too high on Kevin Winston based on what he did last year when he was largely in the box. I need a guy that can run deep and cover as a 3rd-round safety. And I think people are too low on Femi Oladejo based on what he did last year, just because we didn't really see him. I mean, he was a guy that was going to need time to develop up the line of scrimmage, and had 6 games worth and not a ton of snaps. So I think both are going to come back to some level of equilibrium, and, still completing position change. I don't want to say that, but Winston was largely playing as nickel. He's not going to be a nickel this year. It's going to be more natural, safety, playing the same positions as Amani Hooker. They've said those safeties are interchangeable. And Oladejo is playing, without coverage responsibilities. So even more narrow focus. So both in development.
So to call this group as good or better, I want to ask you, John Robinson drafted 19 players in his first 2 drafts. They drafted 17 in Borgonzi's first 2 drafts. They drafted far less in Rand Carthon's first 2 drafts. I think it's fair to say that Conklin, Derrick Henry, Kevin Byard. Now, they had some guys that were starters for a year, but guys that eventually were starters, like long-term. Those 3, and I'm going to give Corey Davis, Adoree Jackson, Jonnu Smith, those 3, because they were starters. Corey Davis, I think 4 years, right? And then before the 5th-year option, they let him go. And then Jayon Brown. So basically, out of 19 draft picks, you got 6 starters, 6.5, 6+ starters, a few of which weren't that great. Is that the bar that we should be placing on these 2 draft classes? Is if you get 6 starters, 3 good ones in 1 year, 3 good ones the next year, because we consider those 2 drafts by Robinson to be great.
Yeah, I think 3 starters a year is pretty solid. I mean, generally, you go in and hope for starters out of your first 3 picks. It isn't always your first 3 picks who start, but that's kind of what you're looking for these days. And I would hope that they've got starters. If not, the base starters don't matter so much as snap percentage.
That's right.
Starters.
That's right.
So if you get snap percentage starters out of your top 3 picks here, Faulk would be the one that wouldn't necessarily.
That's right.
But he is a good rundown guy, so he probably would be. I think that's a win.
Ed Henry says, if Borgonzi hits on Ward, it will tilt the scale way in his direction, even if he overall hits on the same or worse. I don't disagree with that. There's no question he counts as like 2. 2 or 3 starters for that matter. Not bad for Robinson considering he was all gut and instinct. Hopefully Borgoni has a data army to help him check his work. Levis was a bad decision, says Joe. I think in hindsight that's clearly the case. I think in the moment I don't have a problem with taking a guy that some people thought was a top 10 pick at that position. It's just hard to evaluate the risk involved at the quarterback spot versus other spots. But right now, I'm counting 12 players in these two classes that will compete for a starting spot. My guess is that the answer is closer to 6 or 7 that will actually get those starting spots. But, I mean, almost the entire draft class last year for this Titans team will compete for a starting spot with the exception of Khalil Mullings. That's a pretty good draft class.
And the thing is, like, starting is a easy grade, but there are 2 scenarios, like for Jackson Slater starting. He comes in and he, really takes the bull by the horns and looks like a guy that's ready to go and go out there and play. And there's another scenario where that group of 5 is poor. And he's the best of a poor group of 5 and winds up starting and being, a minus player. It doesn't count the same in both of those scenarios.
Eddie says that might say more about the roster than the quality of the draft class. I completely agree. Yeah. Totally agree with you. But let's go with to your point, let's go with Marcus Harris. If they have 60 snaps on defense in a game and he plays 38 of them, and it's because on rundowns he's out of there, right? Or whatever the situational football is that they decide. But your 6th round corner is playing 65% of the snaps on defense. I think that's a hell of a draft pick in the 6th round.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you should be able to find corner in the 5th or 6th in the span of 2 years. So if they found one last year that they like and can keep healthy and can contribute, that's great. The CRA still wants Zeitler. I think if Zeitler shows up now, it's after 2 weeks of camp when they feel like, whoa, we don't have what we need here. But they got to find snaps for these guys to sort through them first. Yeah. I think.
I think at the start of the year, I think it's safe to say Cam Ward, DK, Helm, Tate, and Fowler. That's 5 guys that should be starting in and around the start of the year.
Who was the last one?
Faulk. Sorry, what did I say? I said Faulk, right? Keldric Faulk.
Fowler.
Fowler. I wrote it down incorrectly. I can't read my own handwriting. Faulk. I think Anthony Hill, one of Slater, Harris, or Iomanner, will also be starting, and then it's possible that Femi or Winston starts. So I think there's a chance that this grows from 5 or 6 starters to 7 or 8 or 9 starters.
You have Hill on there? I think Hill's starting opening day.
Right away, opening day, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I would add one to all of this. I think you could have 6 guys in 2 classes starting on day 1 in week 1, and that would, in my vote, that would not include Harris, Slater, Iomanner, Winston, Femi Oladejo, or anybody after Hill in this draft class. And there's a good chance that somebody in that group does actually start. I think you're looking at 7 or 8 potential starters in 2 classes. That's a testament to the bad roster or an indictment of the roster. But it is comparable to Robinson's first 2 classes at that stage.
Yeah. Now, how good. But like you said, Derrick Henry wasn't great from the start. I think Kevin Byard was pretty good out of the gate. So Conklin was pretty good out of the gate.
Yeah, Byard had he played all 16 games actually the first 5 seasons, but he only started 7, so he wasn't a starter. He had 59 tackles his rookie year. He immediately jumped up to almost 90 tackles and starting every single game, and had 8 interceptions in his second season. So he exploded in his second season into a superstar. And do we expect that from Tate or from Kevin Winston? I do not. But could you give you 65% of Kevin Byard? Yeah, I think it's absolutely possible. 75% of Kevin Byard? Probably. We'll see.
Yeah.
I like him, though. I like the player. I like the talent. I'm more questionable on Femi Oladejo, who I think is a really smart kid and is a valuable player. I don't know if he fits into the defense exactly.
Yeah, no, I don't think they draft. I know Saleh talked about scouting him in San Francisco and put a nice shine on it and everything. But I think if they're drafting, if Femi Oladejo's in this year's draft, I don't think he's a guy that they
I tend to agree.
focus on.
I tend to agree. Okay. Let's Sinkers Beverages, everybody. Fill out the media survey that's in the show notes. Sinkers Beverages, five-time liquor store of the year. THC beverages, mocktails, non-alcoholic beers, craft beer, huge wine selection, great cocktail stuff, barware if you need to get great gifts. They've got stocking stuffers for any occasion all year round. So make sure you go check out all the little gifts that they've got there as well. So just it's a great place, great local company. Go support local companies because they are the ones that keep the community going round. And paulkarski.com is another local business that you could support with a couple bucks a month. And your most recent story about Chad Brinker, what is his lasting legacy? Is legacy the right word to even ask you about Chad Brinker?
Well, I wrote about it from Carthon left behind not much. Look, we're 15 months removed from Carthon only, and with Brinker gone, Carthon left behind 2 scouts. That's the it for his fingerprints, really. Brinker's left behind a lot more than that, starting with the GM, who now is the most powerful guy in the building, right? Borgoni. I think we're all envisioning that Borgonzi's going to have some run here. So Brinker's got some significant fingerprints there. Brinker created kind of the research and development department with 2 women that are the head of that. And that's got legs. I can't imagine that Borgoni wouldn't leave that, and take advantage of that, take something from that. And Brinker also, I think, in the sports science department, really expanded things. Zach Woodfin, who's the director of that department, Callahan ultimately hired as his, it's the strength and conditioning coach, but he's called the sports science guy. And so they beefed up that department, and that was felt like Brinker. And now they hired a new sports science guy that's kind of his own department from Denver to hype that up and connect all of that stuff, the sports science with the rehab, with the speed coach, with all of that stuff. That's a much beefier, more serious department. So in analytics and in sports science, the Titans are something that they were not at all before Chad Brinker came around. So I know a lot of people like to knock him and whatever, and there are a lot of things that didn't go well. He never was like the GM either, right? So he's got he's got some stuff in personnel, but not anything that's uniquely his. There's not a guy on the roster that's Chad Brinker's guy per se, right?
No, I agree with you, and I do think Brinker, as I explained on Thursday's show, I just think Brinker got into a career path that he never really planned on, and he loves football. And while he was doing a bunch of stuff that helps football, it wasn't picking players. And I think that's what he loves, and that's in his blood. And so he wasn't doing what he loves, so he decided to go somewhere else to get back on that path. Like that's a very normal adult thing that happens to people in their careers. It's just not as high profile for all of us when it happens. Paul, why do you think Brinker really left? I just said why I think it left.
Yeah, no, I think it's believable, but I also think it was very tidy. There's no blood left here. He gets to say he's going out on his terms. The Titans get to say he's going out on his terms. They don't fire somebody again, making them look unhealthy again. Yeah. I did talk to somebody who had 2 conversations with Brinker since the season ended, who told me that Brinker told him both times that he was expecting to get fired. So, this could have been both Brinker wanting to get back into personnel and Brinker seeing the writing on the wall that the Titans didn't see a place for him. I will say this. It's only been really 2 years, maybe 3, where the Titans had this idea that, and very strongly spelled out by Burke Nihill, if I remember correctly, remind me if it wasn't him, that we need a GM. We want him to focus on personnel. And the job has gotten too big for the GM to do all of these other things and have all these other things on his desk. And we don't want him dealing with so much the sports science and the analytics and the facilities and the field and all of that stuff.
Security and travel and nutrition and
Brinker is going to do that stuff. So if they don't hire somebody to do that stuff, whether he has Brinker's title or not, somebody to head up that stuff, then they were full of shit on that. And they created it out of the people they had in order to satisfy bodies. And they will yet again change the structure, which needs to be the same for a while.
Yeah.
And if they just say, well, the heads of all of those departments are going to head up all those things, well, where are they going to report? They're going to report to Borgoni, which puts that stuff on Borgoni's plate. And Borgoni said, I like this. I want to just scout and do personnel and everything. So we're going to see how sincere the Titans are about this idea of letting the GM and letting operations operate. And whether that's Bryce Wasserman doing it in title or in effect or bringing on somebody over him, this remains a very, very interesting story to me.
Yeah.
If they don't do it, Braden, I think that tells us they were just making stuff up on the fly to fill roles.
There's a lot of questions that have like a lot of really interesting angles in the comments here.
Because I've already gotten this, like, well, maybe it's evolved again. And no, it didn't evolve again in 3 years. It didn't evolve again in 3 years from what you said it was. It didn't.
No. All right. Let me see if I can take some of these here. All right. CRA says Brinker hired Borgoni. Just wish we would have kept him. It wasn't their choice, I don't think. Rather say goodbye to Burke, not looking forward to a family member replacing him. And the response to that from Ray School is, why is Burke Nihill catching a stray? He's been killing it with the new stadium and has little to do with the football side of things. Let me point out one thing there. And that's what I think, to your point about the structure, and this might go a little bit longer, but I think bear with me here because I think it's interesting. And that is, if I had to pick a blame point finger at someone for any of these decisions, here's how I would try to do it. Mike Vrabel's departure was Amy Adams-Strunk. That's what I would say was the driving force and the driving decision maker behind pushing Mike Vrabel out, with a little bit of Rand Carthon, there,
and Burke.
And what happened is when they hired Rand, the people, to your point to Ray School's point about Burke's been very good at all non-football stuff. And I think if you got Burke in a moment of honesty, he would tell you, when I was in the room for the football decisions, I was it wasn't my job description to be there, and we made bad decisions because there weren't any expert football people making football decisions in that room at that time. Since then, they had brought in good football people, Chad Brinker and Mike Borgoni and all these other general managers. And so I don't think, I don't know who's going to be in charge. And you're more interested in sort of like the separation of powers, and are they actually going to keep that structure? And I do think that's interesting. I think that there's a driving force behind each kind of one of these decisions where people kind of went along with it. And I think the lack of the person making that decision is what led to Rand Carthon being hired. I would argue it was the NFL and non-football people. Non-football people in the building and the NFL are what resulted in Amy Adams-Strunk and this organization hiring Rand Carthon. Then those people pushed out Vrabel, and then Brinker was brought in, and then Brinker and Rand and everybody else were kind of dividing up the room. And then, does that all make sense? Am I making any sense at all? Okay. And then I think Brinker hires Borgoni, and then Brinker just finds himself with less power. And I think there's other people in the building that would like some of that power. And I think that's just sort of how it goes. I don't know if that's fair to say or not.
I think it's fair. I mean, I do think they had too many cooks in the kitchen. They may still have too many cooks in the kitchen with McKenzie and Ziegler and Sagany. That's a lot. And I think it reduces the power of the scouts, who I think are largely yes men and data providers, not influencers.
Richard says, I think Brinker was better at his job than given credit for, but he sucked behind the podium. I don't even know if he was that bad behind the podium, but I do think he was better at his job than people think. I just don't think it's the job that he necessarily wanted, which is why Jason's question here, do you think Ziegler's role helped push Brinker out of the room? If he was pushing him out of the football room, then that would make sense. The problem is that if you look at the power structure of the organization, Brinker was in a different department. Like Brinker Brinker was in charge of departments. There was a department head for security, for travel, for nutrition, for sports information, for science, for all these different like facilities maintenance, all these different things, the production team, right? Like every one of those departments has a head, and each one of those department heads reported to Brinker.
Not all of them. I mean, I think the production stuff is on the non-football side. That would be more Burke.
Okay, I see what you're saying. And so all of that is still separate from which free agents are we going to sign?
Right.
Contract negotiations with Skoronski, and who are we going to draft at number 4? It's all just separate. That's all.
The Ziegler question is interesting because Ziegler, McKenzie, Sagany, Brinker with Borgoni, that was like a 5-pack. Well, being one of 5 when there's a real strong leader in Borgoni isn't that attractive. And then if you're the least heard of the 5, that's really not attractive. And maybe he was the least heard of the 5.
Yeah, I think it's all fair. I I don't know how to explain this. I hope for fans that, to your point, there is some runway and stability to allow things to calm down and allow the smart football people to make, at least to sink or swim on their own football decisions. And I do think that's where they're at right now. But now you got to just let it happen. Now everybody needs to kind of stay out of the way, if that makes sense.
Like they could be on a good track, or they could put the son-in-law in there and screw things up.
That honestly, if somebody says like, who do you want to stay out of this stuff? And it's like, I think Amy, Burke, and Bryce Wasserman need to stay over here and let Borgoni run his organization. And then they can evaluate him and they can report to him. But that's how I would look at it, I think. So, good. All right. If you want to read more of PK's analysis of Chad Brinker's tenure, legacy, and lasting effects on this organization, paulkuharsky.com. So there you go. All right, PK, good stuff as usual. Always a pleasure. For all of you listening, thank you for hanging out. Please rate, review, subscribe on a podcast app of choice. Follow us on socials and subscribe to the YouTube page as well. We do really appreciate all you guys. We got tons of coverage all summer long. We're not going anywhere. There will be some football players on fields, and then there'll be some downtime, and we'll still be here the whole time. So covering the Titans the whole way. Paul Kuharsky, always a pleasure. My name is Braden Gall. Thanks for listening. We will talk to you on Thursday.